Welcome to Revelation Report, where ignorance is not bliss, contrary to the popular saying. In the book of Hosea, chapter 4, verse 6, it states, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." So did you know that Luke 21:11 tells us about earthquakes in many places, and that the USGS.gov and many other sites prove that that is happening now? There have been earthquakes recorded where there are no fault lines, and where they have never been recorded before. Magnitudes on the Richter scale never been seen before by man, thousands of people killed and left homeless and helpless. But earthquakes, in many places, it's just the beginning of our problems. Our monetary and financial systems are in dire straits. When hyperinflation hits, and it may cost thousands, possibly millions of dollars to buy a loaf of bread. It's happened before in other countries. While our controllers love to keep us hypnotized and deceived, like domesticated humans and fractured families, we're being foreclosed on. For a second, think of 50 million food stamp recipients. If they had to stand in soup lines like those of the Great Depression, it would stand for miles. We are so dependent on a system that is just teetering on the verge of collapse because of the evil spirits behind the Luciferian leadership that's in control. While politicians, they just put on a show. But when it comes to war, they're on the same side, and this we know. We may be dying financially, but our war machine is on steroids and ready to go. Protests, demonstrations, and civil unrest is worldwide. Wars and rumors of wars. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. These are the beginning of birth pains. The book of Mark, chapter 13, 7 and 8. We are an empire, no longer just a country. 761 overseas military bases and growing. And empires always fall due to some form of financial collapse, because war is not cheap. Trillions of dollars of war in the last decade is now being deferred to high interest payments coming due soon, very soon. The printing presses making the dollars, they don't stop. They're devaluing everything we worked so hard for. The cost of living is moving upward. Our jobs, they're moving outward, primarily to third world and communist countries, because the cheap labor keep the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, much poorer, or they'll die trying. We calculate $5,000 a second on these wars since 2003. Do we lust for blood and war so much that we're willing to let this country commit suicide for an imperial battlefield? America, land of the free and home of the brave, or land to the seized and home of the slave? We never asked for these wars, but now we can't stop it. We're trying to make peace with a bomb and a rocket. God help America, we're losing control. God help America, we're losing our soul. But this too is just the beginning of our many, many severe problems. Because in the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 4, it's prophesied a technological explosion. And without a shadow of a doubt, that time is now. Just a little over 100 years ago, our fastest means of transportation, what was that? Horseback. In 1990, the SR-71 Blackbird was clocked at 2,242 miles per hour. More recently, the unmanned Boeing X-43 project clocked at 7,546 miles per hour. That is a technological explosion. The book of Revelation also speaks of a time where all things will be tracked and a system in all the world that will be used to buy and sell, no transaction unknown or uncounted. That time is now.
This guy has a computer chip literally implanted under his skin, and he asked for it. He wanted it. It's called a radio frequency identification device, or RFID. Why did he do it? Well, we thought we'd ask him. Mikey Scarswell is now owner of a chip in his hand. Mikey, why'd you do this?
Well, I had a lot of reasons for doing the implant, but the most appealing reason for doing it was simple convenience in my life.
Mikey, I'm sure there are a lot of people watching right now who think you're nuts.
Well, that could be the case, but I actually think that RFID is already a big part of our lives. You know, we already see a lot of press about the passport issues and those being RFID tagged. There's quite a bit of consumer goods that have been coming out, such as clothing, license plates. There's just so much in the RFID world to make it pervasive today that I think we'll see more of this activity in various forms.
A new world order. It's also very clear in the book of Revelations that there will be a one world government. Whether behind the scenes or out in the open, there will be, and in many respects already is, a single group of people that will control this world. What or who do you think control them?
A new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges for the future.
We have before us the opportunity to forge a new world order. We have a real chance at this new world order and to press forward to cap a historic movement towards a new world order.
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, a world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order, is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
The Bush administration's open borders policy and its decision to ignore the enforcement of this country's immigration laws is part of a broader agenda. President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it, and he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States. Bill Tucker reports.
The Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America sounds benign, hardly like a policy that critics call NAFTA on steroids. It's a deal that few have even heard of.
It's being done again by very few people at the very top on behalf of the investment class, but the working class of people, political officials across our country, from communities, from cities and so forth, they don't know anything about this.
Yet it was agreed to by Mexico's President Fox, Canada's Prime Minister Martin, and President Bush in 2005.
Apart from that, I think one thing people who are dollar-based need to focus on is the Amero. That's the one thing that nobody's talking about, but I think it's going to have a big impact on everybody's life in Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. The Amero is the proposed new currency for the North American community, which is being developed right now between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico to make a borderless community, much like the EU, and the dollar, Canadian dollar, U.S. dollar, and the Mexican peso replaced by the Amero.
They consider themselves the elite. Even worse, our owners. We're their cattle, property, their slaves, and they watch every move we make. Through vaccines and government health programs, they control our health with a sick, hidden agenda.
You're telling me that these people that dumped this AIDS-tainted blood in foreign countries, who killed children, have not been taken to task in the United States?
It's worse than that. The U.S. government allowed it to happen. The FDA allowed this to happen. And now the government is completely looking the other way. Thousands of innocent hemophiliacs have died from the AIDS virus. And not only they're dying, their family members are dying because they're becoming...
Transhumanism, also known as Humans 2.0. Some say directed evolution, but to me, it seems more like forced evolution. In Genesis chapter 3:5, as Satan is tempting and deceiving Eve, he says God doesn't want her to eat of the fruit because she would, quote, be like God. And she fell for that. Since the beginning, man has always wanted to be like God, creators, and Satan wants to hurt God by ruining and getting rid of us, his beloved creation. Because he knows that transhumanism will lead to posthumanism, which is non-biological beings or robots. You don't believe me? Listen to Ray Kurzweil admit this.
Within 20 years, we'll have models and simulations of every region of the brain. And we will create intelligence in a machine that matches human intelligence in every way that humans are now more powerful than machines. By 2045, that intelligence will be 1 billion times more powerful than all biological intelligence on Earth today. We are in fact going to merge with that intelligence. And so we will ultimately become predominantly non-biological, but it will start with this kind of merging.
We will ultimately become predominantly non-biological. In other words, not living, no longer human. And in the book of Matthew 24:22, Christ says to his disciples while speaking of his second coming, and except those days would be shortened, no flesh would be saved. The NIV translation says no one would survive. And I believe that transhumanism is one of the reasons why. In 2006, the U.S. government gave a professor of bioethics at Case Law School more than $750,000 in a grant to explore and create guidelines for law or public policy that would regulate in our Constitution, our laws, to non-human beings. It doesn't get any more real than that. Soon, being human will be so out of style like a record or 8-track player. They'll start by replacing a leg or an arm and soon be downloading and uploading memories. The best way to convince us to evolve willingly is by exploiting our weakness, death, sickness, disease. As if we don't deteriorate fast enough as it is already, they have a plan to speed that up with GMOs, genetically modified organisms, and the chemicals that they saturate us with. And who's leading the pack here? Monsanto. Monsanto is a key player. Just as genetically modified humans is a real threat, and we see it emerging fast, GMOs in our food and crops are even worse because they're here and affecting us now. With Monsanto's Terminator seeds and poisonous chemicals and prominence with governments, because of payoffs I may add, they're close to a systematic global control of all crops. They are the blessed inventors of Agent Orange used in Vietnam, and the most recently introduced demonic poison is Roundup. Coincidentally, this is the mother's milk of all Terminator seeds that Monsanto has patented. Their products have been causing sickness and birth defects from the Vietnam War to present day worldwide, yet they're too big to touch. They have a revolving door of prominent people, or better said, dominant evil, working in their boards and moving in and out of government positions, keeping the law in their pocket and the written law in their favor. Not to mention being the cause of thousands of farmer suicides in India. Yes, thousands. You see, Terminator seeds are called that because they have been genetically modified to pass on infertility to their seeds. So you have to go back every year to purchase more seeds for your fields, destroying the God-given purpose to all seeds, multiplication and regeneration. As I stated earlier, if Roundup is not given to these crops, they won't grow, ruining and bankrupting farmers everywhere. That is diabolic. And this is Revelation Report, a simple and minimized version of a handful of different real-life problems that are affecting our lives now. Revelation Report is simply here to reveal things that are hidden, even those that seem to be in plain sight. Most of us seem to be blind to the reality that Satan has an agenda. We're not doing ourselves any good by ignoring our enemy, and in some cases even befriending him. We're at war. As soon as we get that through our hard heads, we can acknowledge we are the soldiers in this war, and life is our battlefield. In Christ, we are more than conquerors. I invite you to stand with me and fight this evil that surrounds us. Do not give up. It's not an option. Pass on this video. Continue studying your enemy so that you may defeat him. I'll soon be posting new videos that go into more depth and single subjects so that we may be well informed. If you have a particular subject you need more information on or curious about, let me know. Let's not be like those who perish for lack of knowledge.